Sean Hook's Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. You are in for a remarkable half hour. As the Russian invasion of Ukraine continues with deadly and destructive consequences, caught in the middle are the people. Roughly half of Kyiv's population has moved on. They've moved out. But many remain, including a Ukrainian journalist, Mark Savchuk, who joins us from a bomb shelter in Kyiv. Kind enough to join us. Mark, thank you so much. Hello. People are going to think we're putting them on. You look like you're down the street in the Encanto district here in Phoenix. It's incredible.
No, I'm in Kiev.
I know you are. Okay. Are you safe right now? You are in a basement of a residential building in Kyiv.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yes, relatively safe, of course. I mean, if, as I've already said, if the bomb hits like a building, we're going to be fine. But if the bomb is going to hit right where we are, then yes, obviously we're not going to be fine. So it's not like a specially designed bomb shelter. It's just a basement of a residential building. Can
you give us a little look around, and then we'll get you back on the camera? Just give us a little look. It looks like a basement.
So it's just it's basically like a small office. Here's my colleague, and so yeah, people are working in here, living in here 24/7.
How are you getting supplies in, or did you store them in advance?
Both, actually. So first of all, in Kiev currently, all the basic needs of the city is working. So if you want to go grocery shopping, you can go grocery shopping. They accept cards. Even grocery shops act like, as cash machines. Public transport works. Petrol station work. They just very limited, so you can't use them as you normally would, like every day. But all the basic functions of the city are there. So if we need supplies, we just go and buy them. But obviously, understanding that we can be surrounded, we try to stash some resources up in advance, ideally as much as possible.
So as soon as you go out and venture out, what does it look like in Kyiv right now?
Well, seriously, it's not as bad as you might think, because the fighting is not in the city. It's not even on the outskirts of city. It's in small towns that are like 5 or 10 miles away from Kiev. That's where the action is. So if you go out in Kiev right now, it will be very empty. It will be full of roadblocks. And most of the restaurants and bars and shops will be closed. Like 85% of them will be closed, but still some things will be open. So.
So this would be like a holiday. It would look like a holiday out there. It is no holiday, I understand. But
yes, exactly.
Closed, basically.
You would the closest thing you would compare it to would be a Sunday at 4 a.m. in the morning. Except there are full of roadblocks and military people going around, like stuff like that.
You're aware that Russian troops have apparently encircled the outside of the city of Kyiv. How concerned go ahead.
That's not exactly true. They are forming a big group on the northwest of the city and on the west of the city. And they're also trying to concentrate forces on the east part of the city, so that when they do move in, they will try to attack it from both sides. But currently, Kiev is not surrounded. You have a big road coming out on the southwest. This is how I've traveled back to Kiev, and you can go out of Kiev like today or tomorrow, not a problem. And lots of cargo is coming in and moving out every single day. So Kiev is not surrounded. They do form large military groups in the west and northwest and east in an attempt to surround it, but currently it's not surrounded.
Mark, this is roughly the size of a city in the United States, Chicago, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It's almost 4 million people, right?
Yes, exactly.
How many remain?
Well, it's difficult to say, but definitely more than a half of the people have moved off. And to be honest, I think it's a correct thing to do, because if the fighting do come into the town, I want that the people who stay are the people who will fight. a city that is filled with lots and lots of civilians that are running around and frightened, it's not a good place to fight. So ideally, I would like, basically all the people that want to leave, all the civilians, all the women and children should leave the city, obviously, because fighting will start soon. We don't know whether it's gonna end up in the city because, well, we just don't know. Our defense can be lucky and we will crush them even on the outskirts. But if the fighting does come into the city, it will all obviously be much better if all the women and children have left the city, obviously.
Mark, you may be aware, as of Thursday, top U.S. intelligence officials admitted that they underestimated Ukraine's ability to defend itself against Russia's invasion. A mistake for intelligence agencies that have otherwise been pretty accurate in predicting what Russian President Putin would do, his intent to launch war. We may be surprised. I take it you're not surprised.
Absolutely. No, of course, we are fighting for our freedom, for our country, for our future. And obviously, we will fight till the last man because, this is our country. That's exactly right. Putin was preparing an invasion and Ukrainian people want to fight back. Clearly, no one is suppressing Russian-speaking population here. I'm myself a Russian-speaking Ukrainian who was born in the eastern part of Ukraine. Nobody has ever suppressed me. This is all Russian propaganda. This is all what Putin is trying to put in people's heads, and this is all bullshit. We are fighting for our country. I love my country, and we're gonna fight till the last man. And actually, we have so many volunteers that the army can't accept any more people because we have given out all the guns and all the military gear to the people in the army that we have no more. And this is actually one of the messages us to the West: please give us more guns because we want to fight for our country and we don't have enough rifles.
Well, this debate going on right now that seems to have hit a snag involving these Polish fighter jets. The Biden administration's refusal now to provide combat aircraft to Ukraine, saying that such a move could escalate tensions between the U.S. and Russia. I mean, we're escalated already. I think what they're trying to avoid is World War III. Is there any wisdom in that, in your view?
Look, that's a very, very good question, actually. I'm not a military expert, nor an expert in international politics. So that I don't know, basically. I don't know why administration is refusing and giving us weapons. The planes, from the Poland, that they want to sacrifice them to NATO, so they give it to us. But I can tell you this. The West has already given us a lot of weapons, lots of Javelin missiles, lots of NLAVs, lots of Stinger missiles, which were exceedingly effective against the Russian army. So what maybe our message would be to the West is to give us more of what they have already given us. That wouldn't require to close the sky. But if you give us more anti-aircraft missiles, we will eventually effectively be able to crush all the planes that the Russians send to us in order to bomb medical centers with innocent women and children in them. So I guess there is a certain compromise here where you don't really need to escalate things, but we will have the ability to defend ourselves with the full might of these weapons. So currently our needs are with the anti-aircraft missiles, which is one of the things that I'm sure our Minister of Defense is requesting and trying to get as much as possible. And the West has already given a lot of help to Ukraine, both in terms of financial aid and military aid. All we are trying to say is that in order to effectively combat Putin and his forces, we need more help. And we're fine if you give us the help that you've already given us, just in more quantity.
Yeah, I think the worry in the West, is I'm sure you're aware of it, is that if our fingerprints are all over some of this stuff, Russia could take this as an active war. And then we've got two nuclear powers staring each other down, waiting for somebody to blink. I mean, they have war gamed this, as you know. And the war game, if there were a nuclear launch from either side, could result in 1 billion people getting killed.
To be honest, I think we have already passed that. to be honest.
What do you
I
mean by
mean,
that?
Ukraine.
What do you mean by
Ukraine
that?
is Ukraine is full of U.S. weapons and weapons from Europe. So, what do you think that Putin doesn't know about this, or what? So, you wouldn't be doing anything that you haven't already done.
Okay.
So the status quo hasn't changed and will not change if you give us more weapons. I actually think that the more dangerous way is not to help Ukraine to defend itself. Let Putin basically bomb every living person in Ukraine, and then you're left with what? Do you think Putin will stop? He will never stop.
No, I don't.
So the question is, where is the bottom line really? We are so afraid of what might happen that we will let him kill millions of people? Well, for me, it's completely illogical.
Mark Savchuk is a Ukrainian journalist, grew up in eastern Ukraine. As you know, Kyiv, where you are now, the capital city, is considered the cradle of Russian civilization. Putin has desperately wanted it back for decades. Now he's made a move on it. I mean, it was Crimea. He went into Georgia. He's been doing this encroachment thing over the decades. Did this move surprise you in any way?
Not at all. We have actually been saying to the West, look, you don't need to appease Putin. You don't need to negotiate with him. What the West should have done is stopped him in Georgia in 2008. And the West has made a huge mistake because every single time the West didn't stop him, the West didn't stop his murders of innocent people, he went far and beyond every single next time. So Ukraine for him is his last hurrah. He's old. He understands that he doesn't really have, such a long career in front of him because he's very old.
Yes.
And so Ukraine is sort of his ultimate goal. He wanted to be in history books as a conqueror of, ex-USSR republic, so to speak, the unifier of USSR. That's what's in his mind. He's clearly gone mental. Obviously, in the history books, he will remain as a mass murderer, as Hitler, basically, which he is trying to duplicate, really. So every single time the West doesn't stop him, more and more people die. And I think this is really a stupid strategy. We need to stop Putin now. You don't need to negotiate with him. We just need to kill all his forces. And that will be the end of him. That will be the end of Putin. And that will be the end of his terror on Europe and the world.
Mark, when the Soviet Union broke up in the early 90s, can you give me a little bit of a sense, because we're so isolated here in the United States in so many ways. I suspect you've got family and relatives in Russia, right?
Maybe like far relatives, not really close ones, but yeah,
those
maybe.
Relationships do exist with a lot of people in Ukraine and Russia, correct?
Yes, for sure.
So how does Ukraine view Russia as kind of this imposing father figure, for lack of a better description, where you've got this guy, Putin, who wants to kind of put the old band back together. I'm talking about the former Soviet Union. That seems to be his goal. So when you're next door, how does this feel? Do people get it, or do they hate it, or are they just not understanding what Putin's about, or do they know exactly what he's about? I'm trying to understand the relationship.
I completely understand where you're coming from and the confusion that you might feel. Look, in the Soviet Union, definitely the republics were close. That's for sure. But after 1990s, the republics have separated. And because we are essentially all were sovereign nations, even though we were close, we are still sovereign nations, which means that we are different. We're just close in the way that US and Canada is close. Right. But you never heard, rumors like, Canada is like, US should join us. Otherwise, we will murder everyone who lives in that in this country. Right. So this is exactly what Putin is doing. He is not trying to unify anything. He's conquering things, conquering countries and killing people. That's what he did in Georgia. He helped President Lukashenko stay in power in Belarus. There has been huge civil unrests, and they have been extremely brutally put down with the Russian money, obviously. So this has nothing to do with being close. We obviously treat Russia as a hostile nation. And in our, defense guidelines, in our Ministry of Defense and the Chief of Staff, the military, they recognize Russia as enemy number one. So there's definitely no sense of camaraderie or anything. We are fighting for our lives, and we will kill every single Russian who will come here. Make no mistake about it.
We're going to take a quick break. We're back with Mark Savchuk from a bomb shelter in Kyiv, Ukraine. We're back in a minute on Newsmaker Saturday. We're rejoined now from Kyiv in a bomb shelter, journalist Mark Savchuk, who joins us again on Newsmaker Saturday. So if Russia were to come into, for instance, Kyiv, this would be guerrilla warfare forever.
Yes.
You would never settle for them being occupiers.
Absolutely. No.
Wow. I think we're seeing this here. And I have to ask you, this Vladimir Zelensky, he's become an international hero.
Yeah.
He's a former comedian and actor. We had a guy like this, who everybody underestimated, named Ronald Reagan, who everybody dismissed and said, well, he's a joke. He's not for real. He became a very significant figure in history. As you know, you benefited from this.
Yeah.
Tell me about the feeling about Zelensky now versus even maybe 2 months ago.
That's a very difficult question, and I'm not sure I will be able to answer in 5 minutes so that your viewers would understand. Let me answer a bit simplified version of this question. Is how do we feel about the president after the 24th of February, when the war started? I think it's a smaller question, but it's much easier for me to answer. So President Zelensky has stayed in Kiev. And in fact, when the fighting came very close to Kiev, he precisely said that, he's going to stay and he's not going to go anywhere. And the American administration has offered him, an escape helicopter effectively, and saying that, we can transport you to safety if you want to. And his phrase was, I don't need a helicopter. I need guns, more guns. And I think this is really a very good phrase and spot on. We're here fighting for our lives, for our country, for our future, for our culture. We don't want helicopters. We want guns. We want to kill every single Russian that is on our land. That's what we want. And President Zelensky basically has summarized this perfectly in this one sentence. So obviously we like him for that, because he expresses the will of Ukrainian people to fight.
Well, the times make the leader often. Going back in history, we had Harry Truman, again, who everybody dismissed. And then he becomes a pivotal figure in World War II, who everyone underestimated, didn't think he was up to the task. And when the task found him, he was up to it. And it seems that you're finding this with Zelensky. Did you worry that he would flee and take a deal and leave? What were the countrymen thinking at the time? In order for me to answer this question, I would need like a half an hour to just talk about this. Because I have like 2 minutes or a minute, I won't be able to answer this question in full. All I'm saying is that since the war has started, President Zelensky has expressed his dedication to fight for his country, and he's asking for help, as he should do. And he is pushing, I think, on the very correct talking points. Whereas we are effectively fighting not just for Ukraine, but by destroying the Russian army, we are also providing like a world, some sort of, by destroying Russian army, we are taking away Putin's teeth and his ability to terrorize the whole world. So this is exactly why
the West should help us, because we're not just fighting for ourselves, but we're also fighting for the peace of Europe and the world.
Okay, so this gets into the NATO question. You've been wanting to be part of NATO. NATO has resisted. Do you believe that this is your ticket into NATO? If you can keep these guys at bay, if you can keep Russia at bay, that you will have proven on the world stage that you need and want to be part of this? Because as you know, Putin, that's the line he's drawn. He drew it early. He said, we cannot have NATO right next door to us with their armaments.
We just can't. That's a lie. Look, come on. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. Putin, what's he's saying about NATO is bollocks. It's just his justification of war. It has nothing to do with NATO. He just wants more power. NATO is just his justification of war in Ukraine. Mr. Lavrov, the Minister of External Affairs of Russia, already said that even if we wouldn't have invaded Ukraine at the 24th of February, NATO would have done it the next day. That's his citation. They're mad. They're crazy. NATO has nothing to do with this. Mark, they just wanted to invade Ukraine. This is the way he is communicating to the world and to his countrymen that, look, NATO is expanding eastward, therefore we need to fight back.
It was just a pretext. Yes,
exactly. This is a pretext. It's nothing to do with reality.
Mark, you're a journalist. You've ventured out, I'm sure, to get some of your reporting, right? You're going out of your bunker where you are now, and you're getting out there a little bit and seeing what's happening.
Well, look, there's my job mainly is to form messages and talking points. I'm not working as a field journalist. Like, I'm not with my camera on the positions. I don't do work like that. So Western journalists ask me of the position, like what is happening in Ukraine, what is happening in Kiev, and mostly I do that kind of work.
Are you surprised you haven't been shut down? That you're able to do this with us today, halfway across the world?
Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Are you surprised you're able to still do this? We kept hearing that Russia would knock out all of your ability to communicate.
Yeah, that question is like, why do you still have Wi-Fi in Kiev? Effectively, the answer to that is pretty simple. The machinery they use in order to completely cut off communications work on a relatively short distance, and Kiev is incredibly large. So they, for example, can destroy communications on the outskirts of Kiev, but inside Kiev, it's pretty much okay. And we have cable internet, which will still be able to work, even if they will be right next to us, completely blocking the communication. So, as I said, like, Kiev is more or less fine right now. And when in the media, they try to say that, Kiev is completely surrounded, it's not yet.
Mark,
I don't know.
One more thing before we go, and we wish you and your countrymen the best in this fight. What do you want the West to know that we don't get?
That you need to stop Putin now. Ukrainian people are very brave, and they're fighting Putin's army, and he sustained huge losses, insane losses, and we are very efficient at killing his army. So all the West needs to do is just to keep supporting Ukraine, because we are fighting for their freedom and for basically the security of the whole Europe. So all you need to do, guys, is just help us a little bit more resources and a little bit more weapons. You're not going to escalate anything, because Putin has already escalated everything to the max. It's not going to go beyond what it is now. And we're not asking anything of extra that you haven't already given us.
Mark,
that's what I wanted to convey.
If we can get a connection with you again, will you come back?
Absolutely, of course.
It's great to see you. Mark Savchuk, who is a journalist in Ukraine, joining us from a bomb shelter in Kyiv. We're back in a minute on Newsmaker Saturday. Hey, wow, that was great stuff, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, we'll do it again. Hey, I hear you pronounce this, and I hear you pronounce it Kiev, which is what I was pronouncing it forever. Is it Kyiv, Kiev?
I think the most important thing is that you remember that it's spelled Yiv, so not with E. There's been big discussions of how you spell it. The way you pronounce it is, well, it's not that important. I don't know. We call it Kiev, but it's fine.
Kiev?
Yes.
Well, it's just one more thing the American journalists have gotten wrong.
This is something you don't really to concentrate on. It's fine. The most important thing is the way you write it. That's the important bit. Yeah.
Okay. You don't seem rattled, or you don't seem an imminent threat there. You seem pretty calm, cool, and collected to me.
Look, I'm home. Why would I be threatened? There are lots of bad dudes near my city, and we are working really, really hard to kill all of them. And I think you've asked me a very good question in the end there. What I wanted to convey to the West and to American people, and the single most effective weapon of Putin is fear, and he is trying to scare everyone. And basically, because he's succeeding in scaring everyone, nobody has the balls to basically stand up to him and fight. Ukrainian people has definitely stood up to him, and we are fighting. And believe me, we will fight to the last man. What we're effectively just trying to ask the West is just to keep the support coming, keep the resources coming, and keep the weapons coming. We don't need to close the skies
no-fly zone.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Okay.
Just if you will provide anti-aircraft missiles, that the way that you have already done, you've already done that. What we are asking is just to do a little bit more in quantity.
Mark, are you surprised that Russia is as inept as it appears? They don't seem like they're very
because
good.
I will explain why. Again, this has been a propaganda move from Putin, to portray them as an imminent force that is unstoppable. Russia is extremely corrupt, and their army is also extremely corrupt. That's why it works like because it's corrupt. All the money they've spent there was spent on lavish houses of generals and stuff like that. That's why their army is ineffective. That's why we're saying, stop being afraid of Putin. He is not scary at all. You can face him. You don't actually need to do it by yourself. We will handle it. Just please send in more guns and more money, and we will do this.
You're not asking for American or NATO troops. You're just saying fund your fight. Give you the tools to fight it yourself. But you
just
understand
do that.
that there's worry here because of the nuclear potential. When the Pentagon war gamed this, every time Putin was backed in a corner in the war games, he launched.
Look, as I told you, the very fact that we're sitting right now here is because the West didn't say to him in 2008, you can't do this.
Right. You're talking about going back to Georgia.
Yes.
Before Crimea.
The world should have just told him, look, man, this is not cool. We will not do business with you. We will not buy your gas. We will not buy your oil until you back off. And the West didn't say this. They just said, well, okay. And then you had Syria. Then you had 2014 Ukraine annexation of Crimea and Donbass. And now you will have the war in Ukraine, the whole huge country. And I really asked the question, when is enough? When the world says, okay, this is it. We will go to the end. He must be stopped. I seriously don't understand how many thousands of people he needs to kill for the West to say, no, we can't do this anymore. We have to stop him right now. And this is actually, I think, the most crucial point in the world's history right now. If we keep letting him kill more and more people, I can guarantee he will eventually, use nuclear weapons and kill every single person on the planet. I don't understand why we need to constantly push the boundary further and further. Because if you crush his economy, if you crush his army, we will crush his army. Eventually, that's the end game for him. His own people will take care of him because they see that Putin is eventually walking Russia into the complete disarray and complete, dismantlement of the whole country. So they will take him out. They will eventually remove him from power. And when you're talking about war games, I don't know whether you guys realize it, but when the president issues a nuclear strike, he's not really pressing the button from which the nuclear missile goes off. There are still lots of rounds of people that have to physically, initiate the launch.
Yes.
And we have already had many cases when people have received an order to make a nuclear strike and they have refused to do so because they simply understand what is the consequences of their actions. And I'm sure there has been a couple of cases where on submarines people have received the order to strike and they have refused to do so. And they have been on a submarine, so they actually didn't know whether there was a nuclear war out there or not, and they have refused to fire nuclear weapons.
Okay, so we're on the honor system with everybody having a clear head if something really goes askew.
He is crazy. That is precisely why he has to be stopped, because he is crazy.
Do you think these sanctions have been effective?
Yes, of course they are.
Do you think they will be? It takes a while.
Exactly. So again, my position on the sanctions they are effective, but again, you need to do more. So essentially what we're talking about is a complete blockade of his economy, because if his economy starts to crush, he will have much more problems on his own front, which is, people in the streets are, meeting because they have no food, etc., etc. So he will have so many problems within the country itself that he will he will not be able to provide resources for the war. So again, we're coming back to this point where the West is doing a good job. Finally, you're introducing sanctions, but you need to do more.
Got it. Okay. Mark, thank you so much. It's great to meet you. Best of luck. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
We'll see you. Bye-bye. I don't know about you, but that was a first for me, interviewing a guy in the middle of a war zone from a bomb shelter half a world away. That was very informative. Again, thanks to Mark Savchuk, who is a Ukrainian journalist. We're back next week on Newsmaker Saturday. In the meantime, if there's a show you want to catch, a prior show, you can get it, open up your phone app. It'll take you right there on the QR code, or do it the old-fashioned way. Type in fox10phoenix.com/newsmaker. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next week on Newsmaker Saturday.